What's going on, guys, and welcome to Who to Sign For. Now in this series I'm giving you my recommendations on what players to sign for a specific team in career mode, but before we go on I will say that the signings you'll see aren't designed to be realistic and that the player ratings and potentials may vary for you depending what database you're using and how they perform during the season. You don't have to follow all the tips, this is really just a set of guidelines to give you a hand if you're stuck for ideas and want some suggestions on what players you can sign for a certain club. This is mainly aimed at those of you out there who may be new to the game and just want some help, or for those of you out there who may just be stuck for ideas on what players you could sign for a certain team in career mode. In today's episode of Who to Sign For, we are going to take a look at Crystal Palace of the Premier League playing at Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace this year's FA Cup finalists. Not sure whether they'll win or lose the FA Cup finals. I'll be making this video before Saturday evening's game, but you'll be seeing this episode right after the FA Cup finals, so whether they win or not I'm not entirely sure, but still Crystal Palace, this year's FA Cup finalists, also finished in 15th place in the Premier League. We're going to take a look at who to sign for the Eagles. Now Crystal Palace, of course, a very decent side. This year finishing in 15th place, Alan Pardew doing enough to keep them in the Premier League. And as you look at their side right now, they're a 4-star team in the game, and their objectives in the game are to finish in mid-table in the league and also to reach the round of 16 stage of a domestic cup. Now when you look at their team, it's got some talent, it's got some decent players in there, some experienced players, some decent young players as well. Not a bad side whatsoever, but it certainly does need a lot of progression if you want to take Palace to the next step and get them into a European competition. So with Crystal Palace, you start off with a budget of around £17 million, which isn't a big budget whatsoever, but it is large enough so you can bring in one or two decent players that could help Palace look a far stronger side. And in today's video, I will give you my tips and give you my recommendations on what players I would recommend signing. Now, you can see their contracts page right here, and quite a lot of players have their deals up come the end of the year. Now, honestly, there are some notable ones here, such as Hangland and Adebayor and Speroni and Chamak as well, but I wouldn't recommend giving a new contract to any of these players, even the youngsters that have their deals up at the end of the year, because they don't have too much potential. If you want to, though, do give a new contract to Julian Speroni. He's been at the club since, I do believe, 2004, 2005. I'm sure any Crystal Palace fans can correct me if I'm wrong here, but he's been at the club for over a decade regardless, and he is a goalkeeper who's a fan's favourite, and he's been there for so long, and he'll probably be your number one going into the first season at least. So Speroni, probably worth giving a contract to for sentimental reasons if nothing else, but otherwise I'd let everyone go or just try and sell them and get a bit of scratch for them whilst you still can. They're not going to be important first team players for many years to come. I just recommend selling them and try and raise some cash. Otherwise, let their deals run down come the end of the year. But for players to buy for Crystal Palace, who would I recommend? Well, you've seen their squad, you've seen how it's laid out as well when you start the game up as well. Honestly, I think the main areas to look for Crystal Palace are down the spine of the team, really. Forget the wide areas, forget the wingers and the fullbacks. I think the spine of the team is really important for Crystal Palace, and I would say that centre-back is your number one priority. You have 3 players with their contracts up coming the end of the year that are centre-backs, and Scott Dan is your best at 78 overall, but he himself is in his late 20s. I would say that you need to bring in some young centre-backs, some good, talented young defenders, and 2 main targets for me would be Ruben Veysel of Valencia, a Portuguese centre-back, 21 years old, 76 overall, and Niklas Süle, a German centre-back who plays for Hoffenheim and is 79 overall. Now, these 2 players I think would be really, really good signings. Niklas Süle will cost a little bit more money than Ruben Veysel because he's higher overall and has more potential as well, but they're both very, very capable and very, very good indeed. So if you can only afford one, then probably go for Ruben Veysel and look to strengthen your areas elsewhere. But if you can afford to buy 2, maybe you've used a 60% boost, or you've played a preseason tournament, or you think you can sell enough players to be able to afford both, plus look at strengthening other areas of the pitch as well, then try and bring them both in. That's what I decided to try and do by raising the cash by selling other centre-backs like Breda Hangland here to West Bromwich Albion as well, and Delaney went to try and sign both of these 2 players. And with Ruben Veysel, we've got a straight valuation bid accepted of £4.6 million. You can probably get him for a round valuation like I did here, £4.6 million, because he's not an important first team player at Valencia. But for Niklas Süle, you're probably going to have to spend over £1 million over his valuation in order to get the guy, because Süle is one of the best young centre-backs in the game, starts off 79 overall, gets 86 potential, and his strength rating to start the game off at just 19 years old is already, I do believe, 91. That is absolutely crazy. So Niklas Süle is, of course, the most talented centre-back of the 2, but I'd recommend signing both if you could afford both, and really trying to strengthen and solidify that centre-back area right from the beginning. when you think about the centre-backs that have their contract up coming the end of the year, and knowing that Scott Dan is your best at 78 overall and 28 years old, you'll want to bring in at least one new player. And again, if you can only get Ruben Veysel, he's a very competent centre-back regardless, 76 overall, 21 years old. He's got 83 potential as well, so a growth rating of 7, and I would definitely recommend him if you couldn't afford to get Nicolas Saul. So a very talented young defender, Ruben Veysel, Portuguese, plays for Valencia, as you can see, his stats right here, very, very good indeed. He's 6 foot as well. He can also play right back too, which can come in handy. I've said before, when you buy a player, it's always good to look at their listed positions and see where else they could play on the pitch as well and where they're suited to. If they've got more than one position they can play, they can be very handy as a bit of a versatile player for you. So a very good signing there, Ruben Veysel. Again, you can get him for around valuation, which is about £4.6 million. That's a bargain when you consider how good he could be in the future at full potential, 83 overall. And as you can see as well, we got a bid accepted with Hoffenheim for Nicolas Saul of £9.5 million. So it is a bit over his valuation, that's true, but Saul can get to 86 overall in the game. That is his potential. He's an absolute monster in the game. Saul is one of my most recommended centre-backs if you've got the money to buy him. He's an absolute rock. He's tall, so he's an aerial presence from corners as well and set pieces. He's just a great centre-back. And again, only 19 years old. To be 79 overall already, it shows he is already good enough to be thrown straight into your first team and become one of your best players right from the beginning. So Nicolas Saul, you spend about £9.5 million for the guy, but I reckon he'll be worth every single penny, at least in my opinion. I really do rate him, and I think he is worth the money. So Nicolas Saul is a signing. I would recommend him if you'd have to pay about £1.5 million over his valuation as well. You saw as well, I was trying to sell Wayne Hennessy. You've got 3 goalkeepers at Crystal Palace, and I'd recommend selling one of them. Julian Speroni, Wayne Hennessy, or Alex McCarthy. Now, goalkeepers rarely get injured and very rarely get suspended, so you don't need 3 goalkeepers that are all around the same overall. Hennessy is 74 overall, McCarthy 75 overall, and Speroni is 76 overall. You don't need 3 of those to be around the same overall, and just as good as each other really. So you may as well sell at least one of those, and I decided to go ahead and try and sell Wayne Hennessy because again, he's 74 overall, 28 years old. Nothing wrong with that at all, but you may as well get rid of one of those 3. I chose Hennessy. You can choose Speroni or McCarthy. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. They're about the same overall. Won't be too noticeably different in the game. Up to you which one you want to sell. But still, we sold Wayne Hennessy, and he went and left the club just for a couple million. It's not a great deal of money, but it will help. And again, you don't really need 3 of those goalkeepers, so I would recommend shipping on one of those guys. But also try and sell Shamak as well. Marouane Shamak, of course, he never really worked out the way Arsenal fans were hoping when he came in. But Shamak as a player, he's not terrible in the game, but he's someone who has his contract coming the end of the year. He's in his 30s, and he's not someone you're going to give a new deal to, so try and get rid of him as well. And I would recommend trying to sign a new attacking midfielder for Crystal Palace as well. One of my main targets would be a guy who's pretty underrated in the game, a bit of a hidden gem really, especially on this update. Starts off 75 overall, gets to 83 for potential, and he's got 4-star skills. Oscar Romero, who plays for Racing Club, I think it is. He's a very decent Paraguayan playmaker, and he would be a pretty smart signing. I do believe on the initial database he doesn't start off with too good overall potential, but on the latest one, on May the 19th, 2016, he starts off 75 overall and gets to 83 potential, so a growth rating of 8, and definitely someone worth looking into. You can get him for around valuation as well, so that's around £4.4 million, and you might spend a little bit over the odds, but usually you can get him for around valuation or thereabouts, and he's an absolute bargain. Again, only 23 years old, 75 overall, to get to 83 potential in the game as well. With training, can exceed that, good form can exceed that as well. He could be worth really good money in the future, and definitely someone who you could look at and potentially see him as someone who you can make a profit on in many years to come. So worth signing in my opinion, and he could be your first choice attacking midfielder at least for the first 2 or 3 seasons. Also for Adebayor as well, this is an interesting one, but of course we all know about Adebayor. He's 31 years old, 78 overall in the game, a very good striker when he's on his day. But for Adebayor, his contract's up coming the end of the year. He is 31, he's not going to get any better in the game, and he's on 45 grand a week. Now you're probably not going to give him a new deal, so despite the fact he is your best striker striker in the overall by a significant amount of ratings. I do believe Connor Wickham is the next best at 72 overall. I would still suggest that Adebayor should be sold from Crystal Palace in the game. Now, you may disagree with that, and that's totally fine, but what I'm thinking about is the fact that although you may not get too much money for him, we could only raise £3.8 million. He's someone who you simply won't give a new contract to unless you really like him, and again, on 45 grand a week, you'll probably ask for a wage increase as well. Not something you want to do for a 31-year-old who's only going to get worse. So I would recommend selling him right from the get-go this season. Try and raise some cash for him and look to sign a younger striker instead. Even if you're taking a step back in the overall, you're taking a step forward when you think about the potential of the players and the salary they arrive on as well. So I would recommend selling Adebayor and also Fraser Campbell as well as Appiah too. Campbell is 27 years old, 71 overall. Not a bad striker at all, not a bad squad player, but he's on 20 grand a week and you probably don't need him when you've got Wickham, you've got Dwight Gale, and you're probably going to sign another striker as well. And if you only plan to use one striker with Crystal Palace in their formation like I did, then I would recommend just selling him. Now, the main striker I'd look to bring in for Crystal Palace is this guy right here, Gail Correa, the unstoppable Argentine, who I've called him in my Hamburg save. He's 77 overall to begin with, and he starts off as a very decent striker. Very decent indeed, but he gets to 88 overall in the game. 11 growth rating, his potential is fantastic. He's only 20 years old. His value is £9 million. You might be lucky and get him for that, but you'll probably have to spend a little bit over the valuation like we did here. I believe we got a bid accepted of £10.5 million. So that's £1.5 million over his valuation, but this guy is going to be worth every single penny. If you're not watching my Hamburg save right now, then basically I've got him in one of my career modes, and he is tearing things up. He's absolutely fantastic. He's worth every single penny. He's a really great striker in the game. I'll be honest here, out of all the strikers I've used in FIFA 16, he's probably been the best one. He's just amazing. He starts off 77 overall, a growth rating 11, gets to 88 potential. Imagine his valuation at full potential. He'd be fantastic. He's a really, really good striker. You'll probably have to give him a wage increase and bring him up to 60 grand a week. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, Adebayor was 15 grand a week less, and of course he was one rating higher as well, 78 overall. But Adebayor is only going to get worse. This guy is only going to get better, and he's going to get a lot better. So Gail Correa, in my opinion, would be a great signing for the striker role. And again, £10.5 million, it's a lot. It is a lot, but I think he'll be worth every single penny in the future. And he would also be your first choice striker right from the get-go. He's also got 4-star skills and a 4-star weak foot as well. Very nice indeed. Can play deeper as well in a cam role and a CF role too. And I also wouldn't mind trying him on the wing at some stage as well. But either way, a really good player and definitely worth signing in my opinion. So you spend around £29 million on these 4 players. It's a lot of money for 4 players, but they are all very, very good. And when you think about the potentials as well, 83 potential for Ruben Veysel, 83 potential for Oscar Romero, 86 potential for Nicolas Saul, and 88 potential for Gail Correa. So the key theme for Crystal Palace is building for the future. In the first season, you're probably not going to win the title. You're probably not going to get into the Champions League. You're probably not going to be one of the most dominant sides in England. But if you can lay the groundwork early, if you can build a great base layer with this Crystal Palace side, bring in 4 really decent young under 20s or early 20-year-old players, they would all be worth signing in my opinion. And you can see the stats of the players right here. You look at this side, it's not amazing, but it is a project. With Crystal Palace, it's a project. It's going to take you a while before you really get good in England and Europe as well. But starting off early, selling on some of the players, the older players, shipping out some of the deadwood and bringing in young talent, that's what I'd recommend with Crystal Palace. And that's why these 4 players are my number 1 targets for signings to make. So as per usual, we simulate to the end of the season with Crystal Palace, see how they would get on. They finished in 9th place in the Premier League after 38 games, ended up with 49 points, so 6 places higher up than in real life. So 9th place, not too bad at all. Definitely a good season, I would say, at least Crystal Palace. They finished in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. They were knocked out by the eventual winners, Arsenal, on penalties in the semi-final. After that finished 3-3 and Arsenal got through to the final before beating Hull City, a repeat of a few years ago. And they did reach a cup final, not the FA Cup final, but the Capital One Cup, before they were beaten by Watford by 2-1. So 2 trips to Wembley for Crystal Palace fans in this game then. 1 semi-final and 1 cup final as well. So they meet the cup objective, they meet the league objective, objective. Both of those objectives have been met, and also as well, you see the players come in as well. They all start growing right from the beginning and show that they would be worth signing as well. So 4 players to sign for Crystal Palace. I think these guys will be really good tips. There are tons of other players you could look at signing as well, but these in my opinion are the best recommendations, at least from my view, and I would say that all 4 of those players again will be very, very good right from the first season. You can use them all in your first team right from the beginning. Possibly not Ruben Veysel, possibly keep Scott Dan in the first team. If you want to focus on youth, then replace him with Ruben Veysel, but certainly Correa, Romero and Saul should all be in your first 11. They'll all start growing right from the beginning, and in years to come you'll be looking at these guys. They would have grown quite a few ratings since the first day when you brought them in, and they would all help Crystal Palace become a bigger side in England. So those are the signings I would recommend for a Crystal Palace career mode, guys. I want to say a massive thank you for watching the video. I really hope you have enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed today's episode of Who to Sign For, then please leave a like. That is of course much appreciated and really helps the channel grow as well. Don't forget to let me know in the comment section down below who you would sign for a Crystal Palace career mode, and also do tell me what team you want me to do next in this Who to Sign For series. So thanks for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you for the next episode of Who to Sign For very soon.